Hi, so my name is Shelby, and Shelby Crusoe if you want to be formal. I hope you are having a fantastic day so far. So I want to start my pitch off with a quote. So the quote goes as, "The greatest freedom in life is being able to live and die according to our own desires and beliefs." This is a statement from the Death with Dignity National Center. The Death with Dignity National Center is an organization that's mission is to promote death with dignity laws based on our model legislation to provide an option for dying individuals and to stimulate nationwide improvements to end-of-life care. For someone who is not familiar with physician-assisted suicide, what that is basically it gives someone the option to decide whether or not they want to end their life. And it's not anyone can just do it. It's for people who are terminally ill. And you still have to be sound of mind, like you have to go through quite a process to even get it done. You have to have less than 6 months to live. There are like a lot of qualifications, but it just sort of like gives people who are unfortunately have like a disease such as like terminally ill cancer. It gives someone sort of like a say in the matter of what they want, so instead of like waiting to die from a horrible disease. So the first state to pass this law was Oregon in 1997, but the next state to pass the law didn't occur until 2008 in Washington. So that's about like an 11-year downtime. So Oregon was pretty much like the only state who even had this at the time for a long time. The face of the movement was actually Dr. Jack Kevorkian, who some may have known as Dr. Death. He pretty much aided several patients in the process and ended up being convicted of second-degree murder in 1999 after he sent a video of himself injecting medication into Thomas Uke, a patient of his that suffered from Lou Gehrig's disease. And he sent that video of him giving him an physician-assisted suicide to the show 60 Minutes. He ended up serving 8 years on a 10 to 25-year sentence. A little while after that happened, and it wasn't until about 2014 that Brittany Maynard became the new face of the movement, as she was a California native who relocated to Oregon in order to receive the medication that would end her life. She was a 29-year-old woman who suffered from a terminally ill brain cancer. Her story went viral after she posted a YouTube video explaining her choice and described it as a well thought out and informed choice to die with dignity in the face of such a terrible, painful, and incurable illness. After her death, California became the next state to pass their act titled the End of Life Option Act in 2015. Hawaii is the most recent state to have passed it, and the act goes into effect on January 1st, 2019. But so far, only 8 out of 50 states have passed the bill thus far. When I was first presented with the concept of a physician-assisted suicide, I was very on the fence about it. I didn't really know what to think about it because I had never really experienced someone dying before. It wasn't until a couple months ago that I actually, my mind was very firmly changed into supporting the bill. That, I think every state should have this option for anyone who is terminally ill or whatnot. My boyfriend's grandmother, she had suffered from basically her liver was decaying. There was no way, it was pretty much a waiting game for a couple years, and she ended up with a function in her heart. Her heart ended up failing her, and we had to sit for 3 days and watch her, wait for her to pass. They couldn't give her like any medicine or anything to ease her into passing. It was pretty much just, we watched her die for 3 days, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And I remember my boyfriend's mother, which was the grandmother's daughter, said she would have given anything to just be able to put her out of her misery because she was miserable. So, getting out of, I know that was a lot, that was really heavy, but, I just wanted to really introduce the fact of, what a physician-assisted suicide is in my personal experience. Like, with seeing someone passing away and not being able to do anything about it and feeling so helpless and having them feel helpless that they couldn't have a choice in the matter as well. But now, with all of that in mind, my film is actually titled Death with Dignity. It is pretty much like if The Bucket List and Seeking a Friend for the End of the World had a love child, it would be this movie. It is a dark comedy, modern day road trip film. It starts in Chicago, but sprawls across the United States to California, where our main character, Shannon Riley, that is where her family home is, and it pretty much like follows a few stops along the way. So my logline is a terminally ill middle-aged woman travels across the country with a 20-something criminal to get to a state where an operation that can be done that will end her life. So essentially the film begins with Shannon Riley. Shannon Riley is in her late 30s. She is an actuary, much like Ron Stoppable's dad, the sidekick from Kim Possible, the cartoon. That's what his dad did, so that's what she is, just for a reference point. It begins with Shannon Riley. She wakes up in her bed next to her husband. There are pictures of them scattered around the room. They seem like a very average, happy couple. Cut to their kitchen. Shannon is making breakfast for her husband and her 2 children. It is like any other day with noise, laughter, and rushing about until suddenly, Shannon wakes up in the same room, in her bed, in a hot sweat. The room is different, though. There are no pictures, no noise, no husband, and no family. It was a dream. In fact, Shannon is all on her own in the world. With an overarching monologue as Shannon staggers toward her bathroom and throws up, the viewer is sort of introduced to what type of person Shannon is. As I said, she's around like 35, 37, complete cynic, has no family, lives in a very large house by herself, comes from money, but has pretty much spent the majority of her life shut in and working and not talking to anyone else or doing anything else. So after the vomit session, Shannon is seen next in a doctor's office. She is waiting for her primary physician to speak with her about her test results. It is here that the inciting incident occurs. Shannon is officially diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and must go through chemo. Flash forward 2 months. Shannon is bald with a headscarf on, sitting in a cancer support group session. She doesn't typically speak during these things and isn't really sure why she goes, but she does every week. During the session, a couple people are overtly optimistic and talk about their families and remission and having grandchildren and whatnot. Janice, the support group leader, asks Shannon to share something good that has happened to her since the last meeting. Shannon states that she's still dying. She finds out the results of her chemo treatment soon, and that the bright side is, depending on her results, not everything about life is completely pointless yet. Yeah, it was an awkward share. So after the support group disbands, Janice follows Shannon to her car with a pamphlet. She states that group therapy isn't always for everyone, but she is part of another program called the Departure Alliance, and that she believes Shannon would be a good candidate for it. Essentially, the Departure Alliance, it's more of a one-on-one interaction where people that have to serve a community service sentence can fulfill it by spending times with those who have a terminal illness at the hospital and have no other family or friends. Janice throws the pamphlet in Shannon's car and leaves, telling her to consider it. So Shannon is now at home. As she heads to soak in a bath, it is apparent how the chemo has affected her body and has made her weak. As she settles herself, she listens to her voicemails. She has a missed call from a past lover that she had in college. He is trying to contact her again, but she just deletes the message. Cut to the next day. Shannon is sitting in the doctor's office, waiting for him to come in. He delivers the news. The chemo didn't make enough of a difference. She only has months to live. Cut to her car. She is sobbing her eyes out. Eventually, she calms down. She Googles on her phone, can a terminally ill person decide when to die? And then she calls the program stating that she would like to join. So now we are going into our second half of Act 1. This is where we are introduced our second main character, Eli Morgan, our criminal. Eli's story starts when he is being released from prison. As he exits the gates with several others, he waits for his ride. As he is waiting, another gentleman is waiting with him. Eli is in his mid-20s, used to be involved in gang affairs, and is currently just trying to get his life straight. He is kind of brass, but has aged a lot from his experience in prison, which he has spent the last 3 years in. He is intelligent and creative, as he has made a living as a tattoo artist since he was 16. But as Eli waits, it is pretty clear that no one is coming for him. He chats with the other man he is with, someone who's been in and out of the clink multiple times. The man takes a liking to him and asks if he needs a ride after his brother pulls up. So, this man's name is Santiago. So Santiago and his brother pull up to Eli's old apartment building that he was living in with his girl. And Eli says he's going in to see his girl at their place. The men both laugh at him. He says they're good to drive off, but they just nod and don't go anywhere. So Eli walks up the stairs and goes to open the door, but it's locked. He knocks on the door, shouting for Leah, his girl. The person who answers is not Leah, nor is it even a female. In fact, it's the guy he beat the living crap out of the last time he was on probation, and this guy is part of what added time to his sentence. Eli is stunned and majorly pissed off. He sees Leah in the background, and he pushes the guy back to try and get the apartment, and Leah shouts for him to go, and he ends up just leaving before any cops are called. So Eli ends up staying with the man and his brother who gave him the ride. The man says that Eli reminds him of his son. Santiago says Eli reminds him of his son and that if he can work for him in his shop, that he can stay for a little while until he can get back on his feet. The next couple days, Eli works for Santiago, and then they go to a local bar. Eli mentions how he has to get community service done. One of Santiago's friends mentions the Departure Alliance and said it was an easy way to get his sorted. Eli considers it. He is asked about how he ended up behind bars, and he says that's a story for another drink. Flashback with Shannon. She arrives at the hospital. She is walking through the cafeteria and spots Eli. She's put off at first. They sit with each other and share an awkward small talk. Shannon is snarky, and Eli is just very unsure. But then Eli says, "Hey, you got cancer, right?" So we cut to a scene where they're on the roof, both smoking a blunt. Or a joint, whichever you prefer. Shannon talks about how she only has a couple months that he might not be able to get all his hours in. He asks if she has a bucket list of some sort. She laughs. She says her whole life has been primping her retirement fund that she's not even going to be able to use. She has no family. She comes from money and has an estate in California, but hasn't been there in a few years. But all the money in the world couldn't even save her from her disease. She's never really lived. Eli says that she should do something, like not just wait around. She considers this. Shannon is home now and is looking online. She comes across the Death with Dignity Act. Shannon talks with her doctor again. This time she brings up that she wants to go to California to her home estate and receive a physician-assisted suicide. Her doctor asks if she is sure. She nods. This is her choice. Shannon contacts Eli. They have seen each other for a few times now. She offers for him to be the person he leaves everything to if he comes with her on this adventure. He can have her house, bank accounts, whatever. She gives him a new start. He gives her an adventure. He agrees. So now we go into Act 2. Shannon and Eli officially start their road trip. First stop, buying a sports car. Shannon and Eli go to the car dealership, and Shannon picks an $80,000 car. Eli is amazed, and the car dealership salesman looks very sketchy at them as they are a very odd couple. But ultimately, he sells them the car. And after they get the car, they start their journey on the road. Here's where they have several adventures. They stop at a bar and drink together and play pool and dance. They stop at Eli's friend's house in Colorado, where she smokes out of a 4-foot bong and tries LSD for the first time in the mountains. She even plays beer pong for the first time. However, when in Colorado, Eli's buddies ask what the scheme is with her. Eli said that it isn't his scheme. He's taking her across the country to help her end her life. But they don't really believe in and give him a hard time about it. Eli slowly starts to get attached to Shannon, but when they're in Colorado, she sleeps with one of his friends. The next day, as they continue their journey to California, to her old home by the ocean, Eli is very irritated with her. They get in a fight and Shannon pulls the car over. She gets out and starts walking. The entire time, since this road trip started, Shannon has ignored whatever calls she's received and has been very discreet about them. The phone rings and Eli picks up. It's Shannon's ex-lover. The man asks who Eli is. Eli hangs up. He runs after Shannon and they continue to fight, with Eli saying that she's been wanting to be alone and that she probably did this to herself her entire life. and that he was done with it. Ultimately, she collapses. He picks her up and carries her towards the car. They end up going to a nearby hospital, and it turns out that she's been severely dehydrated. She gets her fluids up for a day, and Eli stays with her the entire time in the hospital. She wakes up and says that she needs to make it to California to get the prescription filled and that she doesn't want to die here or get stuck here. She begs him to break her out. He agrees. They break out of the hospital, and Eli drives the rest of the way. She's getting worse, and Eli is getting more and more attached. He gets her to the estate, and they get settled, and they talk to each other for a day or two. Eli sits with her on the deck that overlooks the ocean. He asks about the man on the phone that's been calling her this entire time. She tells him that he was someone that she was madly in love with. They were married for a year or two. She was pregnant a couple times, but always miscarried every single time. And soon they just grew apart. She got into working and life just sort of happened. He said he didn't want her anymore and that he just needed time. So she isolated herself away from him. He's tried to reach out a lot over the years, but she just can't talk to him. Eli and her sit in silence. He asks if she's really going to do it. She says yes. She admits that she reconsidered for a moment on their journey, but that she knows the end will be ugly and it's coming soon. She doesn't want pain. She just wants to be held. She says that she has a binder with directions on how to contact the people that with her will, and that there's stuff in there that she needs him to do. She asks him to get her prescription. He does as he's told. So now we're in Act 3. A couple days go by and they spend time with each other. On the last night, Eli gets all dressed up and brings a bottle of champagne and sets up a nice dinner for her. They drink and then they kiss. As they are going to sleep, Eli ends up just holding her. She takes the medicine and then she passes overnight. Eli wakes up and then realizes that she is gone. The next day, later, Eli eventually gets the binder and inherits everything. He stops by to see his ex-girl, Leah, and gives her some money to help her get by and says that he'll always love her. He visits Santiago and asks if he can still maintain a job with him and donates to a shop. He meets with the gentleman that was always calling Shannon. They're in a bar. The man walks up and to Eli to make sure that he's the guy. Eli nods. Eli explains how he knew Shannon. He says that she has really just truly changed his life forever. He gives him a letter that Shannon had written him. And as Eli is walking out, he finds another letter in the glove box of the sports car. But this one is meant for him. It was from Shannon. And that wraps up the movie. Pretty much I feel like our set pieces are, our moments in Colorado, a bunch of our road trip moments, the arguments, the hospital, the beach house and whatnot. Yeah. So that's my film. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to shoot me an email. I really hope you enjoyed the pitch. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your evening. Thank you. I will be attaching a leave behind with this. So thank you.